Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Best Today podcast. I am your host, Shantae Grant. Thank you for being present with me today as we talk about what the last year has taught me about transitions. This episode is airing in August, which is a time of the year where school is beginning to start for most of you who are teachers, for those of you who are students, and for those of you who have students in your home. And it makes me think of this time last year when my family was entering a time of great transition. And I didn't realize how much transition it was because I think I underestimated how big of a transition it was. It didn't feel initially, right, like a big transition. So from mid-March of 2020 up until August of 2022, roughly 3/4 of my house was home all the time, right? My daughter was in virtual school. My son was home with our part-time nanny while I worked from home. And then last school year, August of 2022, they both, my son and my daughter, started school. And I ultimately purchased a space near their school just because of all the back and forth. And that meant that we went from being home all the time for work, for school, for all the things, to now being out of the house. And initially, it just did not seem like that big of a change for me. I've been, here before where my daughter was out of school, in school outside of the house. But this was the first time for me as a mom of two to have two children outside. Now, thankfully, they attended the same school, so that made logistics that much simpler. But, adding in, now having to get up at a certain time, having to be dressed and out the door at a certain time, a commute, all these different factors where things could go wrong, that they're out of your control. And so you want to control the controllables and give yourself lots of space and room for traffic and forgot lunch boxes and all the things, which I would like to say, I think we went an entire school year. I just thought about this. Never once did we leave a lunchbox. So just hand clap for me. I'm sorry. I just realized that. I was like, we made it a whole school year. Because when we get in the car, I always say lunchboxes, right? I check and I think we have always had our lunchboxes. Yay. Now watch next school year. Let me knock on some wood, right? But, all these different logistics that are coming in this time of transition. And now, well, I'll say this, our commute, again, was further away. We weren't going to a school that was like 3 turns away from our house. We had these great routines and rhythms because we were home all the time. So, I've talked about this in many places before. We had our alarms and our routines, and this gets triggered, and we had our tacos built, right? If you don't know what that means, go to rightnowroutine.com. That's the way I teach you how to create routine with the TACO method, TACO. And a lot of that had to change. And I think that's what I underestimated, how many things would have to change, because how many things were really centered around us being here and not having to, even not having to get up and get dressed, right? Being able to just go straight downstairs and work out longer because getting ready for school meant just making sure my daughter was logged on in time. So all these things, and now being a year in front of that or ahead of that now on the other side of that, I am really excited about the upcoming school year because we can now build off of what we built last year. And there are a few things I am tweaking. And then I want to share with you those lessons that I learned and that really were reinforced, and that I want to make sure you know. And they're lessons that stayed with me throughout the transition and what made it so successful. It was a great school year. It was just a time of transition, and transitions are exactly that. So I'm going to talk about that. So I got 5 things I want to share with you. The first is when you are in a period of transition or in time of transition, you have to allow the trial and error-ness of it all, right? I'm talking about a transition for being a time period that was almost a full calendar year, right? Well, a full year from August until I guess when school ended in May. But for me, that whole time I considered transition because it was new for us. Even when we had gotten down into the swing of things, it was still trial and error, or, okay, we found the thing that works and now tweaking it out and making sure it's going to stick. And then when this new school year starts, we stick with the things that are going to stick. And there are some things that I want to tweak, and I'll try to remember to talk about that at the end. If I don't, remind me and we'll do it in another episode. But the trial and error of it all. I think so many times when we're in transition, you think I'm going to make a new plan and just execute it and boom. And then if it doesn't work, you're like, oh, this transition is the transition is the problem. No, you are the problem because you're not allowing the trial and errorness of it all, right? That basically means you're going to make a decision, right? We're not going to dawdle. Oh, do I do this? Nope. Make a decision. Decide. Test it out, see what happens, get the feedback, then tweak it if needed until you find what's the right fit. And there may need to be multiple versions of what works. This works on this days of the week. This work on this type of day of the week. This work when this thing is true. And then when that thing isn't true, this is what works, right? Don't force what is working. Give yourself time for the trial and error of it all, but don't overthink it. Just get started. Pick something. This is what we're going to try. And then get the data from it and then tweak as needed. Okay. So the first thing is you have to give yourself the space for the trial and error that is needed when you're entering to a transition. And now you're trying to tweak different things in the way you've done things, different routines, different schedules, sometimes everything, and sometimes maybe not everything, but the things that do need to be adjusted, give yourself the space for trial and error. I did that for a whole entire school year, right? Most things had already stuck after a couple months, but there were some things that really were still trial, error. Okay, try this. Does this work? Okay, I don't like the way this feels. Okay, we need to do this, right? Number 2 is give yourself space and time to settle into the new way of doing things. Again, people think, oh, okay, I've been doing this for 3 weeks, and it's just not, okay, you've been doing it for 3 weeks. How long have you been alive on the planet? Longer than that, give it some time, right? So many things for me were new, not new, like I've never done it before, but new in this setting. Making lunches before, I had gone 2 school years without having to make lunches in a lunchbox to leave the house, right? A commute with traffic to make it in time for drop off and pick up, moods after school. This is my first time seeing my son go to school every day and come back. I had to figure out, okay, what is his vibe after school? Because we need to tweak with that. It's one where, okay, this is how he's feeling. Then I need to be able to adjust for that. Now, how's my daughter? And really dealing with that, you don't know what that's going to be like. So you have to give space for that, because if you don't, it becomes a struggle and everybody's unhappy. You are upset because the children are being children and having moods, because just like we have moods at the end of the day, they might too, right? And instead of having this power struggle, allow everyone to be the human that they are, and then figure out how can I set an environment and space that is best meets the needs of everyone, right? And so all of these factors, right, I am taking in real time and deciding what to do with that, right? So you see why you have to give yourself space to settle into the newness of things. And sometimes those new things wear off. Maybe this was the mood for the first month or the first week or the first 3 months. And now we're at this place. And that's another part of transition. Sometimes as soon as you get something figured out, it changes a little bit, because it's like, oh, it's no longer new, so I'm not responding in new. So that's why you have to give yourself space to settle into this new way of things, right? And not try to rush everything to be picture perfect like it may have been before. So, right, all these things, these are the factors. These are things in the air that I'm trying to take in, plug and play, and say, okay, what do I do with this? How do I fit this into things? Moods after school, understanding them. And how do I plan after school? Okay, we don't have the temperament to do this kind of thing after school, but maybe we can do this. And then also looking at my workload, what could I realistically take on? Which the answer was far less. When that happens, right? When I look at my season and I look at my capacity and say, okay, work hours are going, right, and shrinking. The opportunity there, though, is for me to have even more narrowed focus on what matters most in my work time, so that I could be present in work. And that was something that was another ball thrown into the juggling mix of this transition. And that I will say, when I talk about like what can we do after school, one of the things that I am changing this year or tweaking is we are going to completely and utterly eliminate screens when we get back into our home. I might even turn the Wi-Fi off. Literally, I just want to exist with reading blocks, things that are just not screens for myself and included. And I probably won't pick my phone back up again until the next morning. Because the things I need to have taken care of, if I can't take care of before school, tough. So that's one of the things I am changing. I am modifying our digital usage. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. Screens after school, and just being far more mindful of deepening this love of reading that has really taken over me in July when we had the social free month, and just really becoming a voracious reader again. I've always read, like I always have books checked out from the library of books that I've purchased that I'm actively reading, but to the point now I'm reading and writing more than ever. And I want to keep that up. And so one of those boundaries is when we get home, it is time together and it is time for reading, for me to be thinking or playing or just doing something that doesn't involve my phone. Because really for me, that's my screen, or the television for my children. At Best Today, we exist to help women just like you be your best one today at a time. So each week on the podcast, we are going to highlight your stories and your voices. So let's see what's in the inbox today. Today, we have a 5-star review of our Not Waiting for January class replay. And it's from Stacy, who writes, a very timely class. This was such a fantastic class. Shante spoke about a lot of misconceptions presented to us and how they can cause us to put off to that perfect time. Hint, there is no perfect time. What we should start today. She provides the principles needed to retrain our brain so that we can start small and see results. Shante has a very personable and easy way of communicating hard truths so that they are actionable. Highly recommend. Thank you so much for that 5-star review. And like Stacy, I highly recommend if you have not sat in this class. First of all, the great thing is as soon as you order it, you get immediate access. So you're about 1 to 2 minutes right now away from being able to watch it. You can pause, take notes, and there is a place to submit questions if you have questions along the way. So go right now to notwaitingforjanuary.com. We'll also link to it in the show notes. Notwaitingforjanuary.com to get into that class replay. You're going to love it. And it's really going to help you if you have been someone who really has not been able to be consistent with optimizing your time. Notwaitingforjanuary.com. Go get inside this 5-star reviewed program or class replay. You're going to love it and learn lots. And don't forget, there is a space to submit questions if you have them while watching. Notwaitingforjanuary.com. So that was number 2. Number 3, reshift your priorities as needed and what gets your time, energy, resources. That's kind of really why, again, actually, I didn't even realize that was the next one. That explains why I've made this change I just told you about. Reshifting your priorities, because transitions take more energy out of you than you may imagine, right? So initially, especially in the beginning, you may have shortened capacity. You have less capacity than you had before the transition, because just in being in that transition, you're a little more depleted than usual, and it's easier to deplete you than usual because your body is now, and your mind and your environment, all these different things might be changing. So where possible, trim and prune things down so that the main thing is what gets your focus, right? You can add things back in as you desire, and maybe you'll decide, you know what, I don't want to add this back in, and as your capacity grows. But when you are in a transition, I want you to think about shrinking in the things that are in your world because you have less capacity. I paused on purpose because I want you to feel that, because I know you're going to fight it. Don't add on things. This is not the time to add more things. This is the time to, you can't see me, but I'm like taking my hand like a ball far apart, and then I'm bringing them together and making a really tiny ball, right? I didn't add on anything new last year, right? As it relates to really, pretty much anything new. I got a new office, but things like that. But basically, I didn't anything new. No extracurriculars. We're not doing that. Like, we not doing that. For me or for my littles, for my children. This school year, they will both be involved in one thing that takes place at the exact same time in the exact same place. It's manageable for me and it works well for them. And that is like now adding some peanut butter on the plain bread. Last year was just bread. It's just bread. Just bread. And this year it's like a little thin coat of peanut butter. And I'm not trying to make a 5-layer sandwich. I love myself too much for that. That doesn't work for me. Right. But don't be in a time of transition and then try to add all this extra stuff in your life. Oh, we're going to do this. I'm going to take up jazzercise. I'm going to put them in 17 different sports. We're going to go over here. We're going to join the Scouts. We're going to join the Eagles. We're going to join the Birds. We're going to join the Raccoons. And I'm looking at you like, okay. Reshift your priorities as needed, because you're going to need more to reserve more of that energy, because your capacity is going to be minimized, or that's not the word I want to say. It just takes more energy out of you, right? So you have just less capacity, and honor that. That's the answer. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's what I'm taking that with me into this new season, and saying, here's some ways I want to shift that. I want to shift what the after school energy feels like. Here's one way I'm going to do that. There's going to be a fight, right? I know there's going to be a fight early on. It might be a fight even within myself. I'm practicing that now, but my children aren't. They still get a little bit of summer at the time I'm recording this. But there's going to be a fight when you're used to being able to watch one show or something. And it's just not going to be, but again, with them, it's going to be a fight initially until we learn that this is the way we do things, and seeing the benefits of it and rolling through. And that's going to take commitment on my behalf and theirs. So see how that takes a lot? So I don't have the capacity to be adding other stuff on, because that in itself is going to take a lot from me. Okay. Number 4 is talk it out and ask for help where you need it. Don't be Superman. We're not Superman in this season. I'm not trying to be Superman in no season, or Superwoman in no season, but don't try and say, I'm going to save the day for everyone at your expense. Talk it out. Sometimes just even getting on the phone with a friend, or talking out to a spouse or whoever. This is what's going on. Okay, this is how I'm feeling. This is how it's going so far. We're doing this. We tried this. This is how that's working. We still kind of late over here. Or this isn't working out. This part feels really clunky. Talk it out and problem solve together with someone who's like-minded and who cares about you. Notice I put some caveats on who you're talking to. Don't talk to the internet. The internet always has advice. And I'm wondering, all these people who got advice, why are they on the internet? Because that's not... You ever question that? All the people who got advice on the internet be like, on the comments, you be like, if you were that deep, if you were that really, maybe you wouldn't be on the internet in the comments all the time. Okay. But anyway, that's just me. Maybe that's just me thinking about that. But anyway, talk it out to a person who cares about you and is like-minded. Problem solve together. Ask for help. Discuss the tough parts of transition and get help where you can. If you're in the Best Today community, which why wouldn't you be? It's a fantastic place to do that. There's a place, the community that I've created. You can come in and say, okay, this is what's going on. Let's talk it out. Talk it out on our live calls. I'm telling you, it's so helpful just to talk it out. Sometimes when you're talking it out, you problem solve on your own. It's you and you having a conversation and talking it out. It's like, oh, okay, here it is. I started out with it, but then it kind of came to me. So please use that. Talk it out and ask for help when you need it. And number 5, reflecting on transition, please find easy solutions for problems that have simple solutions, right? This should be a life rule, but in particular, during transitions, that can look like so many things. But one of the things looked like for me was easy meals. Okay, what's an easy, quick meal that I can always have at the ready when something just doesn't go the way I thought it was supposed to, or my energy is lower than I thought? Where are those places where I can have simple solutions that work in my favor? Can you simplify choosing what to wear to avoid overthinking? Okay, on Monday I'm wearing this, on Tuesdays I'm wearing that, on Thursdays we're doing this, right? But whatever it looks like for you, I want you to find places that you can offer yourself simple solutions, and then implement them, even if it's just temporary, because again, transitions that drain on your capacity, you want to put things in place where you don't have to think too much in real time, which I always talk about that in real life anyway with routine. But those are my 5 thoughts as I really start reflecting on what the past year taught me about transitions, and how I'm taking that into life and into this new school year. Number 1 was to allow the trial and error of it all. There's gonna be that, right? Number 2, give yourself space and time to settle into the new way of doing things. Number 3 is to reshift your priorities as needed, and reshift what gets your time, your energy, your resources. Number 4 is to talk it out and ask for help where you need it. And number 5 is to find easy solutions for problems that have simple solutions. There's some things in life, not to, solution might take a little minute. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the easy stuff that you can control. Bada bing, bada boom, bam. That's it. All right. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. Come and chat with me as always in the Best Today community at besttodaycommunity.com, or you can text us. We love hearing from you when you've listened to the podcast, 404-737-1002. Thank you for being present with me for this week's episode of the Best Today podcast. Remember that everything that I do here on the podcast within Best Today and everywhere that you see me is to help you to live well. To learn more about how to get started with our products at Best Today, you can go to besttoday.co/quiz. It'll tell you which product is right for you. And if you like more of me, this voice right here, I want to invite you to join my online publication. It is called For Those on the Journey, where I write and share weekly. You can go to forthoseonthejourney.com to listen. We'll link to it in the show notes as well. And you can find the show notes for today's episode at besttoday.co/129. I'll talk to you on the next episode. Bye for now. If you enjoyed this week's episode of the Best Today podcast, you are going to love the Best Today Guide. Our Better Than a Planner guide teaches you how to get clear on what you want, identify your self-destructive habits and behaviors, and intentionally create space to prioritize yourself every single day. Don't go the journey to being your best one today at a time without the Best Today Guide. See inside its pages and order yours today at besttodayguide.com. Even better, when you order the Best Today Guide, we gift you with your first month free inside of the Best Today membership. So what are you waiting for? We're giving you everything you need to trade busy for intention. Go to besttodayguide.com and order yours today and join thousands of women across the globe proclaiming each day, this is what my best today looks like.